Hello, and welcome back to FoxxTV, Healing and Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Andrea Fox, and Rick the Plant is right here with me, steady as always. I'm glad you're here today. This conversation is not heavy, but it is one of those quiet, honest ones. The kind that doesn't always get said out loud. I want to talk about something I've been noticing, and maybe you have felt it too. That feeling when you don't quite feel like yourself anymore. Not in no crazy way, not in a way where everything is falling apart, but in a quiet, subtle way. Like something in you has shifted and you're still trying to understand what that shift really means. I remember sitting one morning, just in my own space, nothing unusual going on. Everything around me looked the same to me. Same routine, same old responsibilities, the same environment, but internally something felt a little different. And it wasn't panic, wasn't like no anxiety feeling, it wasn't confusion exactly. I don't think it was more like awareness, like I was noticing myself in a new way. And I had this thought, when did this change happen? Because I couldn't point to a specific moment. It wasn't like something big happened overnight. It felt gradual, almost quiet, like something had been shifting for a while and I was just now catching up with it. And I started noticing little things. The way I responded to situations felt different. Things that used to bother me didn't hit the same. Conversations I used to engage in easily now felt like they required more energy. And not in a bad way, just in a different way. And if I'm being honest, for a moment, I questioned it. I thought, am I off? Am I overthinking? Why don't I feel like the version of me I used to? Because there's comfort in recognizing yourself. There's comfort in knowing how you usually feel, how you usually respond, and how you usually move through life. And when that starts to shift, even in a quiet way, it can feel unfamiliar. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. But here's what I'm starting to understand. Slowly, not feeling like your old self doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means something is changing, and change doesn't always come with an announcement. It doesn't always show up with clarity. Sometimes it shows up in your energy, in your awareness, in what you're drawn to and what you're no longer drawn to. There's a version of you that people are used to, the way you've always shown up, the way you've always handled things, the way you've been responding. For a long time, that version worked. It carried you. It helped you navigate life. But at some point, growth has a quiet way of saying it's time for something more. No pressure. Not more responsibility, but more alignment, more awareness, more truth in how you live and respond. And sometimes that means you start outgrowing things, outgrowing certain conversations, certain reactions, certain ways of thinking. And that can feel a little all strange because now you're in this in-between space, like in the middle. You're not who you used to be, but you're becoming who you're meant to be. Again, that's that middle space. It can feel a little uncomfortable, not because something is wrong, but because something is shifting. There's a shift going on. You might notice yourself pulling back a little more, needing more quiet, thinking before responding instead of reacting quickly, seeing things with more clarity, even if you don't fully understand it yet. And it's easy to misinterpret that, to think you need to get back to how you used to be, to try to reconnect with what feels familiar just because it's comfortable. But what if this version of you is actually more aligned? What if this is growth, just not the kind you expected? For me, I've had to learn that. I had to learn not to rush that, not to force myself back into the old patterns just because they are familiar, not to question every shift just because it feels new, but to sit with it, to allow it, to trust that even in this space, I'm still being guided. And this is where my faith really meets me. Because God doesn't just work in the obvious moments. He works in the quiet shifts too. In the parts of you that are changing slowly. In the awareness that starts to feel different. And in the growth that doesn't always have a name yet. And sometimes you don't fully understand what He's doing. Not until you look back later and realize I'm not the same person I used to be, and not in a lost kind of way, but in a deeper, more grounded kind of way. So if you've been feeling this lately, like something in you has shifted, like you don't quite feel the same, I want to say this gently. You are not off. You are not lost. You are becoming, and you don't have to rush that. You don't have to force clarity. You don't have to go back just because it feels easier. You can sit in. You can sit in this space and trust that something meaningful is unfolding, even if you don't have all of the words for it yet. I don't want to rush you out of this moment. So wherever you are, just sit with this for a second. No fixing, no figuring everything out. Just being, because sometimes that's where the growth actually happens. All right, if this conversation spoke to you in any way, just take a deep breath with me right here and remind yourself it's okay to grow, even when it feels unfamiliar. Thank you for spending this time with me today. These conversations, they truly matter. And as always, Rick the Plant and I are right here with you, growing, learning, and moving through life one day at a time. If this episode meant something to you, share it with someone who might need it too. And if you haven't already, follow the podcast so you don't miss what's next. Until the next time, stay grounded, stay open, and trust who you are becoming. Peace and blessings.